So here's the last part of our 4.4 notes. Once again, we are factoring, okay? So this is when maybe a does not equal 1 or we have a common factor. Okay, let's look at our next one. We have x cubed minus x squared minus 20x. Now, anytime you really have something, always ask yourself, do those terms have something in common that we can take out, the common factor? Well, let's look at numbers. Okay, so we have 1, 1, and 20. Is there a number that those three have in common that's other than 1? Well, not really. But what about a variable? Yeah, they all have x. Now make sure when they do have like variables, you take out the least amount you can. So the smallest amount we can take out is 1x because our last term only has that amount. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go down. So x cubed, and we take out an x, that's just left with x squared. Now if I do an x squared and take an x out of that, that gives me just an x. And then when we do the 20x and take an x out of that, I'm left with just 20. Now we do need to decide, can we factor this a little more? Now notice our a value is 1, so that means we only need to find the factors of 20, or the numbers that multiply to 20. So we have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and then 4 and 5. Okay, which pair could add or subtract to a negative 1x? That's going to be our 4 and 5. Now don't forget, anytime you take something out, you need to keep it and bring it down. So I took my common factor, I rewrote, and now I can factor more. So I'm going to have x and x, and then I have 4 and 5. Now if I want to get to a negative 1, my x has to be negative, and my 4 has to be positive, because 4 minus 5 gives us that negative 1. And this will be our final answer. Okay, let's look at the next one. We have negative 16x squared plus 12x. Okay, do these two terms have a number in common? Yes, they have a 4 in common. Okay. Okay, do they have a variable? Yes, they have an x. We can only take an x out because remember that last term, the most amount it has is just 1x. Okay, let's divide. So we have negative 16 divided by 4. That gives me negative 4. And then x squared divided by x just gives me x. So notice I'm just going down by 1. Okay. And then for the 12x, I have 12 divided by 4. That gives me plus 3. And if I take an x out of x, I'm not left with anything. Okay, now, notice here, can we factor the negative 4x plus 3 anymore? No, because notice this had a squared, it was a quadratic. Now we just have a linear. So since it's a linear, that's going to be our final answer. Okay. Now you also might think, well, could we take a negative 4 out of this? Yeah. So we could have taken a negative 4x out. And when that happened, if we do negative 16 divided by negative 4, that gives me just a 4x. And a positive 12 divided by negative 4 gives me negative 3. So this could have also been an answer. So both of them would have been correct. Okay, go ahead and do the last one for me. So pause the video and do that one. Okay, let's see what you got here. So we have 2x squared minus 10x minus 48. Do these three terms have anything in common? Yeah, they have a 2 in common, so that's a number. Do they have a variable? No, that last term does not have an x, so we can't take an x out. So my next thing is to rewrite. So I do 2 divided by 2, that gives me x squared. Negative 10 divided by 2 gives me negative 5x. And negative 48 divided by 2, that gives me my minus 24 there, okay? Now, make sure you bring down the 2, and we're going to go ahead and factor. So, since our a value is 1, all we need to do is figure out the numbers that multiply to 24. We got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, we have 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Now, which pair will give us a 5? Well, that's going to be the 3 and 8. So I have x and x. Now notice we want to get to a negative 5, okay? So I did rewrite, so I'm not trying to add up to the negative 10. I'm adding up to the negative 5 since I took the 2 out. So in order to do that, I need to have a negative 8 and then a positive 3. That'll be my final answer. So that's why we want to rewrite, because then we can factor correctly. Okay, let's do our last couple of examples here. Okay, once again, go ahead and pause the video, or let's do this one. We'll do this one together, the 12x squared minus 28x minus 24. Okay, so let's see, do those three numbers have a number in common that we can take out? Yeah, they all have a 4 in common. Now you want to take out the most amount. So if you said 2, that would be great, but then you have to take more out because then you did not factor it completely. So think of the largest number that can go into those numbers, okay? So we take out a 4. 12 divided by 4 gives us 3x squared. Negative 28 divided by 4 gives us negative 7x. And negative 24 divided by 4 gives us minus 6. So I know I factored or took out the most amount because 3, 7, and 6, they don't have any numbers other than 1 in common. Now notice also I did not take a variable out because this last term, the 24, does not have a variable. Oh, so now our A value is something other than 1. So we're going to go back to what we've been working on in this section for 4.4. So first things first, the 4 has to come down. I create 2 sets of parentheses, okay? And so I figured out numbers that multiply to 6, which is 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, and numbers that multiply to 3. And this is why we want to rewrite, because we're actually factoring 3x squared minus 7x minus 6. Well, I know 1x and 3x have to work. Now, 6 has multiple pairs in its list. So I'm going to start from the bottom and try 2 and 3. Okay, multiply the inner, I get 6x. Multiply the outer, I get 3x. So if I have 6 and 3x, will that ever add up to our 7? No. So let's go ahead and switch that. So I'm going to have 3 here. And then I'm going to have my 2 on this side. Okay. We have 3 and 3, that gives us 9x. And then x and 2, that gives us 2x. So if I added or subtracted 9x and 2x, could that give me a 7x? Yes. Now notice this is a negative 7, so I need to make sure it's negative 9 and then 2x. So that means I have a negative x minus 3 and then 3x plus 2. And notice this works because negative 3 times a positive 2, that does give us a negative 6 when we multiply, so that works. So our final answer here is going to be 4 times x minus 3 times 3x plus 2. Okay, now go ahead, pause the video, and try the last example. Okay, let's see what you got. So, first of all, 6x squared plus 33x plus 36, do these 3 terms have a number in common? Yes, they have a 3 in common. Do they have a variable? No, because the last term, 36, does not have a variable with it. So, I do 6 divided by 3, that gives me 2x squared. 33 divided by 3 gives me a plus 11x. And 36 divided by 3, that gives me a plus 12. Okay? So notice 2, 11, and 12, do they have any numbers in common? Well, the only number is 1. So that means we took out the largest amount. So now, make sure you bring down the 3, and I'm going to create 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, now, just like we did last time, 1 and 2, or 2 just has 1 and 2. 12 has a little bit more. So we have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Okay, so we have to use 1x and 2x. So those are going to stay the same. But with our 12, we have multiple pairs in our list. So let's start from the bottom. So we're going to start with 3 and 4. And what we're doing is trying to add up to that 11x. So 3 times 2x gives us 6. And 1x times 4 gives us 4. Okay, 6 and 4, will that add or subtract to an 11? No. So let's switch that. So let's put a 3. So let's do a 4 first, and then a 3. Okay, 4 times 2, that gives us 8x. And then for outer, x times 3. So if we added or subtracted 8 and 3, could we get 11? Yeah. So to get a positive 11, we will add. Okay. So now let's just make sure this works out as well. So if we do positive 4 times a positive 3 and we multiply, we do get a positive 12. So our final answer here is going to be 3 times x plus 4 times 2x plus 3. Okay, make sure if you have any questions over this, you contact me, and make sure you work on the homework assignment. See you guys later.